There are 3 nights on the water that I have never been able to explain, and I've stopped trying to convince people they didn't happen, because I know exactly what I saw, and I know exactly what I heard, and no amount of it was probably nothing makes either of those things go away. If you spend enough time out on open water, at some point you'll understand why so many old sailors refuse to say certain words out loud, why some captains wouldn't leave port on certain days, why every marina has at least one guy who won't talk about a slip near the end of the dock. I used to think all of that was superstition for people with too much time alone on the water. I don't think that anymore. These are 3 things that happened to me, in order over the last several years, and I need somebody else to hear them, because I still don't have an answer for any of it. I grew up nowhere near a city, and honestly, I think that ruined me for regular life, because nothing compares to having a lake in your backyard, practically. My parents didn't own a boat, we couldn't afford one. But my best friend Callum's family did, and they treated that boat like a second house. His dad worked construction and somehow always had cash for a new engine or a fresh coat of paint. And every summer weekend from the time we were maybe 12 years old, we were out on the water. By the time Callum got his license at 16, his dad basically handed the boat over to us on weekends, no questions asked. And that's when we started exploring further out than we ever had before. That's how we found the island. It wasn't on any map we ever saw, not that we looked very hard, and it wasn't much bigger than a grocery store parking lot, shaped like a teardrop, ringed with jagged gray rock on 3 sides, with one narrow strip of pebble beach where you could actually pull a boat close enough to swim in. We started going there constantly. At first, it was just a cool spot to kill an afternoon, but eventually it became our place. We carved our initials into a dead tree near the shoreline. We built a fire pit out of stacked stones. We even gave landmarks names like the Widow Rock and the Elbow, this bend in the tree line that looked like someone had bent an arm out of the forest. Over the years, we mapped every inch of that shoreline in our heads. We played manhunt on it in high school, the kind of game that took 2 hours because there were so many places to hide among the rocks. Later, once we were old enough to bring coolers instead of juice boxes, it turned into our party spot. Somewhere we could be as loud as we wanted with nobody around to complain. And it really was nobody every single time. Once in a grate, while we'd spot another boat anchored near the far point. Someone fishing, never anyone camped out, never anyone staying past dusk. I used to think that was just because there was nowhere convenient to tie off. No dock, no real landing, just that narrow strip of beach and a lot of effort to get anything onto shore. It made sense to me for years. It stopped making sense the night everything changed. What got me, looking back, is how dead the place was. Not dead like abandoned, dead like empty. No birds, no squirrels, no chipmunks, nothing scurrying in the underbrush. I don't think I ever saw so much as a spider on that island. And for a chunk of land surrounded by forest and water, that should have been the first sign that something was off. But we were kids, and kids don't question good luck, they just enjoy it. We used to make up stories about the island to freak out anyone new we brought along, telling it was haunted, that people had vanished there, whatever sounded good around a campfire. All of it was invented. I want to be clear about that, because for years I never believed a word of it myself. That changed the summer after we finished community college. The summer Callum decided we should finally spend a night there instead of just an afternoon. He'd upgraded to his own boat by then, something with just enough room to shuttle 8 people out in 2 trips. The plan was simple. Haul everyone out before sunset, set up camp on the beach, cook, drink a little, sleep on the stars, and head back the next morning. I was thrilled for a reason that had nothing to do with camping. A girl in our friend group, Priya, and I had been circling each other for months, and an overnight trip felt like the perfect excuse to finally close that gap. We got out there around 4 in the afternoon, and it was perfect. We gave everyone a full tour, showed off the Widow Rock, the Elbow, all our dumb teenage landmarks, and by the time the sun started dipping, we had a fire going, hot dogs on sticks, and someone's cheap speaker playing music low enough that it didn't feel like it was ruining the quiet. For a few hours, it might have been the best night I ever had on that island. Then Priya went quiet. She wasn't a quiet person normally. She was the loudest one in any group, always laughing at her own jokes before she finished them. But somewhere around 11, she just stopped talking, and when I noticed and asked if she was okay, she didn't answer right away. She was staring past the fire, into the tree line, and when she finally spoke, she said she kept hearing something moving out there. I told her it was probably some animal. She reminded me that in 5 years of coming here, none of us had ever seen so much as a bird. I told her that just meant it was nocturnal. She didn't buy it. She said, and I remember this exactly because of how flat her voice was when she said it, "It doesn't sound like an animal." By this point, the fear had spread. Trevor's girlfriend, Callum's girlfriend, Ashley, asked if we were completely sure we were the only people on the island. And we were sure because there had been no other boat anchored anywhere, and we'd walked the whole shoreline that afternoon looking for exactly that. Callum, trying to be the hero, grabbed a flashlight and told everyone he'd prove there was nothing out there. He swept the beam slowly across the tree line. Priya screamed. Everybody jumped, and Callum swung the light back, and there they were. 2 figures standing just inside the trees, close enough together that at a glance they almost looked like one shape. Pale, still, watching us the way you'd watch fish in a tank. Like we were the interesting ones. I have never in my life felt anything like the cold that dropped through me in that second. Callum stumbled back, and the beam swung wild with him, and by the time he got it back on target, the tree line was empty. Nothing. He started shouting at the woods, daring whoever was to come out and stop hiding, and for a few seconds nobody moved. Then, stupidly, 3 of the guys jogged over there to scare whoever it was, and found absolutely nothing. No footprints. No broken branches. Just faint laughter, somewhere off in the dark, too far away to place. Nobody spoke for what felt like a full minute. Someone, I think it was Ashley, started crying quietly, and Priya just kept whispering that we needed to go, over and over, like a word stuck on repeat. That was enough for me. I told Callum we needed to leave. That pride wasn't worth whatever this was. He argued for about 10 seconds and then agreed, and we started breaking camp fast, kicking sand over the fire, throwing gear into bags. Priya wouldn't stop telling us to hurry, so she could still hear them laughing, even though her flashlight never caught anything again. We were wading out to the boat when she screamed a second time, and when I turned, the light was on the beach, and the 2 figures were standing right where we'd had the fire 20 minutes earlier. I got on the boat first. Callum was one leg over the side when a woman's voice, called his name. Clear as day, like she'd known him his whole life. She told him she wanted to show him something in the trees, said it wouldn't take long, said she'd send the rest of us back after. Callum froze with 1 foot still in the water, and I swear to you his whole face went slack, like whatever was playing his head had completely replaced the moment we were actually in. I grabbed the back of his life vest and hauled him into the boat. So hard we both went down onto the deck. He didn't fight me. He didn't say a word about it either. Not that night. Not ever. Even though I know he remembers it. We pulled anchor and got out of there. Priya kept the light train on the beach the whole way, and the man was already gone, but the woman stood there watching us go until the trees swallowed her. Callum did 1 slow loop around the island before we left the area entirely, checking every inch of shoreline for a boat, a canoe, anything. There was nothing, no way on or off that island except by water, and there was no vessel anywhere near it. Whoever, whatever, those 2 were, they'd been there long before we ever showed up, in a place with no food, no shelter, and apparently no need for a way home. Callum and I went back exactly once more, the next morning, in daylight, just to look. A few feet into the tree line, we found something leaning against a trunk. A figure. Maybe 3 feet tall, built entirely out of lashed-together sticks, roughly shaped like a person. We didn't touch it. We didn't stay. We got in the boat and left, and neither of us has set foot on that island since. I still think about the memories we made there before that night, and I still don't have an explanation for what came after them. That wasn't the only time the water showed me something I couldn't explain, though it's the one that still shows up in my dreams the most. There's another story that's followed me around for years, when I've only told a couple people because I know exactly how it sounds. And unlike the island, this one didn't happen out in the middle of nowhere. This one happened somewhere I thought was completely safe. This one happened at a marina I used to keep my own boat docked at, back when I was in my 20s and basically living aboard it for summer. Marinas, in my experience, are boring in the best way. Quiet, a little nosy, full of retirees who want to talk your ear off about engine maintenance. Not the kind of place you expect anything sinister. I've been renting a permanent slip there since I was 19, and that particular summer I practically never left the boat, just fished, read, and enjoyed having nowhere else to be. The Marina had a system for visiting boats, a transient slip, they called it, for people passing through who needed a spot for a night or two. The empty berth next to mine got filled that way pretty often, and over the years I met all kinds of interesting people through it. Retired couples doing the whole coastline in the summer. A family from 3 states over who'd gotten lost trying to make it to some regatta. A guy who fixed clocks for a living and talk about gear ratios like other people talk about their kids. It became one of my favorite parts of living out there, never knowing who'd be tying off next to you for the night. I want to stress that because it's the reason none of us at that marina thought twice when a boat we didn't recognize radioed in for a transient slip on an otherwise unremarkable Thursday afternoon. One afternoon, a boat pulled in that I didn't think twice about. Mid-sized cabin cruiser. Nothing unusual, and the dockhand putting the empty slip beside mine. I went out to help with the lines, because that's just what you do in Marina. You help your neighbor tie off. The guy barked at me before I even got close, told me he didn't need help and didn't want it. I let it go. Not everybody wants company, and I wasn't going to force it once he had the boat secured. I tried again anyway, just introduced myself, told him to knock if he needed anything. He looked at me without any expression at all, didn't say a word, and walked past me back onto his boat. I'm not a chatty guy myself, but if someone greets me, I answer them, so the silence rubbed me the wrong way. He disappeared down into the small cabin at the bow and slammed the hatch behind him. Before I even got back to my own boat, I caught a smell drifting over from his slip. Not fish, not diesel, not the usual marina funk. Something rotten. Something that made me actually gag a little, and it was strong enough that I checked my own hull before I placed it as coming from his boat. I noticed, sitting near his wheel, a beat-up steel thermos with names scratched into the side. Walt. About an hour later, I heard noise coming from Walt's cabin. Something heavy hitting the floor, glass breaking. There was a small porthole on the side of his boat, but it was covered from the inside with something, a towel maybe. Then the hatch popped open and Walt climbed out, gave me a long look, and started walking down the dock toward the marina's shower building. That was really the first good look I got at him. Big guy, maybe 6'2", somewhere in his 60s, bald except for a ring of white hair and a pair of thick black frame glasses that made his eyes look enormous, almost distorted, like looking at him straight on was slightly wrong somehow. He was gone maybe 10 minutes, and the whole time, something kept thumping around in his cabin. Muffled, low, rhythmic almost. I remember thinking, dog, had to be a dog. When he came back, I tried once more, told him I'd heard something banging around, and figured maybe he had a pet, mentioned there was a field by the marina lot where a dog could stretch its legs. Walt walked right up to where I was sitting on my own back deck, leaned down close enough that I could smell that same rotten odor on him, and said, "No dog, it's just me." Then he walked away and shut himself back in that cabin, and I didn't hear another sound out of the rest of the evening. I went to bed around 10. Walt never came back out. Then at 3 in the morning, I woke up to that same noise, except this time there was a voice with it. Walt's voice saying, "Shut up," over and over, low and furious, like he was trying not to be heard and failing. Under it, that same muffled straining sound, like someone was trying to answer him and couldn't. Then he shouted enough once, sharp, and everything went dead silent. I lay there the rest of the night, telling myself I'd imagine half of it. At 7 the next morning, Walt came out with a duffel bag and headed for the showers again. I don't know what got into me, but the second he was out of sight, I climbed onto his boat. The smell nearly put me on my back. His cabin door had a lock on it that looked aftermarket, nothing that came standard on a boat that size. I knocked and asked if anyone was inside, half rehearsing an excuse in my head in case Walt came back early. Instead of silence, I got that same muffled sound, louder now that I was standing right against the door, and it rose and pitched the longer I stood there, almost like pleading. I panicked and left, got back to my own boat, and sat there with my phone in my hand, trying to convince myself I was overreacting, that calling the police over noises and a bad smell was insane. While I sat there, I glanced up at my cabin window, and Walt was standing outside it, looking straight in at me. He didn't say anything, didn't move for what felt like a full minute, then turned and walked back to his boat. He paused at his own hatch for a second, like he was thinking something over, and then he cast off. I didn't offer to help this time. I just watched him go, and I never saw that boat or that man again. Years later, I still think about it. I tell myself I overreacted, and then I think, what if there really was someone locked in that cabin, and I did nothing? Where I grew up, you learn to mind your own business, no matter what you heard through the walls. And that's exactly what I did that morning. And it's the one thing from that whole summer I can't shake. I looked him up eventually, or tried to, ran the name Walt against every boat registration search I could find for that stretch of coast. Checked missing persons boards going back years. Even called the Marina office to ask if they kept transient slip logs on file. They didn't, not past a season or two. Nobody at that marina remembered the boat at all when I asked around later that year, and I started to wonder if I'd gotten some detail wrong. The day, the slip number, something. I hadn't. I know what I heard at 3 a.m, and I know what that door looked like, bolted from a boat that size shouldn't need bolting at all. The last story I want to tell happened only a few months ago, and it's the reason I don't roll my eyes anymore when someone brings up old sailor superstitions. My friends Owen and Priest, that's actually his nickname, don't ask, and I go out fishing together whenever our schedules line up, usually on Owen's boat, usually leaving right around dawn. The three of us have been doing this since high school, and there's a rhythm to it by now. Coffee in the truck, gear loaded the night before, radio chatter with the Marina office before we ever clear the breakwater. Nothing about that morning felt different at first. About half an hour out, Owen went quiet and started muttering to himself, and when we asked what was wrong, he pointed toward the horizon. There was a boat out there, and as we got closer, I noticed something flying off the stern, an orange flag with 2 black shapes stitched onto it. I don't know boats. Owen does. That's practically his whole personality, and he told us it was a distress flag, a VDS, visual distress signal, and that whatever boat that was, it was in trouble. Normally, you don't just cruise up on a stranger's vessel out on open water. But if someone's actually in distress, you don't have a choice. Owen slowed us down as we approached and called out, asking if everyone was okay. No answer. It was a decent-sized cabin cruiser, bigger than ours by a good margin. And from where I stood, I couldn't see a single person aboard. Priest asked if we should just back off and radioed in instead. None of us had signal out there. I told Owen I'd climb aboard and check, and he really didn't love that idea. Worried we'd startle whoever was on there and make things worse. That argument didn't last long once I reminded him I was CPR certified, and somebody over there might genuinely need help. Priest wanted to just circle it once more and radio the Coast Guard once we had signal, leave it to professionals. I understood the instinct, but if somebody was actually bleeding out below deck, professionals 30 minutes away weren't going to help them in time. Owen brought us alongside, and I jumped the gap onto the swim platform, shouting the whole time that I'd seen their flag and was there to help. Up on the aft deck, there was a table with 3 coffee mugs still steaming and 4 fishing rods rigged and ready like someone had just set them down. A jacket was thrown over one of the cushioned seats. Whoever had been out here, they'd been active only minutes ago. I made my way toward the open sliding door, still calling out, and noticed muddy footprints tracked all over the deck, several different sizes, which wasn't strange on its own for a fishing boat, except that the boat felt completely empty despite all of it. Inside, the cabin was a mess, cabinets hanging open, things scattered across the floor. A built-in bed sat tucked against the far wall, empty except for a heap of pillows and blankets bunched against the bulkhead. The bathroom door was the last thing left checked, and I opened it half expecting the worst. Empty, same as everywhere else. I turned to head back out, and out of the corner of my eye caught movement. The pile of blankets on the bed was shifting, pillows sliding off one at a time, and then a small, frail woman sat up out of the mess and looked directly at me. I told her right away that I wasn't there to hurt her, that I'd seen the flag and come to help. She didn't respond, didn't blink for what felt like way too long. Her skin looked leathery, sun-worn, her gray hair pulled back in a tight braid, and her eyes had this quality like she wasn't looking at me so much as through me. I told her I was going back to my friend's boat, that we were going to get help, and I climbed back over to Owen's boat as fast as I could. I was mid-sentence explaining what I'd found when a woman appeared on the aft deck of her own boat, walked straight to the flagpole, and calmly lowered the distress flag. She folded it, shoved it under the table, and walked back inside without once looking our way. None of us knew what to do with that. I argued she still looked unwell, that whatever was going on, we should call in regardless of the flag coming down. Owen agreed, and we motored back toward shore until I finally got a signal and called in, told them about the flag, the woman, all of it. They said they'd send someone to check. We didn't know how long that would take, so we turned around and headed back out to keep an eye on her boat until help arrived. When we got back to where it had been anchored, it was simply gone. No wake, no direction to follow, nothing. We never went fishing that day. We just went back to Owen's place and sat around trying to make sense of it. And as far as I know, nobody from the Coast Guard or the police ever called us back about it. I've turned that morning over in my head more times than I can count. A woman flags down help, waits until someone actually boards her boat, then takes the distress signal down the second she's been seen, all without saying a single word. There were 3 cups of fresh coffee and 4 fishing rods rigged for people who were nowhere on that boat, and only her. Since that day, I've had a run of bad luck that some of my friends only half-jokingly blame on a curse. Lost my job a few weeks later. Wrecked my car not long after that. Owen's grandfather mentioned some old superstition about waters like that one. Something about vessels that call for help they don't need. But I don't put much stock in curses myself. I don't know what really happened out there that morning. I know what I saw, and I know that boat had clearly been crewed by more than one frail old woman only minutes before we arrived. I'm not asking anyone to believe me. I just can't stop thinking about where the rest of them went, and why she wanted us gone the second she knew we'd seen her. I've told all 3 of these stories now. The island, the marina, the yacht, and every time I lay them out next to each other, I noticed the same shape underneath all of them. Somebody or something that shouldn't have been able to hide. Hiding anyway. A silence right before the fear starts. And every single time, whatever was got exactly what it wanted, which was for us to leave. I don't know if these 3 nights are connected in any real way, or the water just collects these things over enough years that anyone who spends their life on it eventually runs into one. But if you've ever been out on open water at night and felt like something was watching from just past where your light could reach, I'd genuinely like to know, because I've stopped believing that feeling is nothing.